Welcome to the Timeless Marketing Podcast with Brian Kurtz, your connection to insights from some of the top direct response marketing minds on the planet.
Hey, it's Brian Kurtz here, host of the Timeless Marketing Podcast. Today's episode is a clip from one of the 2-hour calls inside Titan's Accelerator, my private mentorship program for direct response marketers. Before we get to that, I have one question for you. Do you have a marketing insurance policy? If you don't, you need one. And that's why I created Titan's Accelerator, which is one of the most giving communities and serves as the de facto board of advisors and marketing insurance policy for over 250 of the best and brightest direct response marketers, copywriters, media buyers, marketing agencies, senior executives, anyone in direct response marketing who is committed to growing and scaling their business. The bottom line, you don't have to grow your business alone. And you don't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars either. Titan's Accelerator is 1/10 of the price of most groups of its kind. I know because I hosted a group that was over $20,000 a year. If you want to see how Titan's Accelerator can help you grow and scale your specific business, go to briankurtz.net/help. That's BRIANKURTZ.net/help. And with a private membership, you'll receive access to the full presentation from today's episode, along with the Q&A and discussion that followed. As an added bonus, you'll receive access to a vault filled with many more private calls just like this one. Again, if you want to see if Titan's Accelerator is a fit for you with no obligation, go to briankurtz.net/help. That's BRIANKURTZ.net/help. And feel free to email me directly. I respond to every email with questions about this episode or just to say hi at brian@briankurtz.net. Now on to today's episode.
Okay. We're going to go to Chris, and Chris has already started participating, which is wonderful. Now you got a sense a little bit of who he is. Chris is somebody who I've admired for many, many years. He is a lot younger than me, but so I have the advantage of knowing him when he was nothing. But he was never really nothing. He was always something. Chris Haddad was always something, and he was somebody who a lot of folks in the direct marketing, copywriting world said, you got to know Chris Haddad. He's got this creative brain and mindset that is unlike any other person that any of the copywriters had ever met, any of the copywriters had ever worked with. And when I got to meet him, I realized they were right. When I met him, he was mostly in the dating and relationship space.
Yeah.
But he's gone through an incredible journey. And I don't know, I'm not going to give anything away because I don't know what he wants to talk about specifically about that journey, but he's been an open book with a lot of people about it. So I'm sure he's going to be an open book with everybody in Accelerator. And so the title, originally, I didn't have your title right away, Chris. So the title
I forgot to send it to Carla fast enough, but that's okay.
No, but you saw the one that I did. I did.
I like it. It's perfect. Yeah.
It was wrestling in the mud with the pig method.
I dig it.
But I think, and we'll talk about that.
We will.
But basically, we're going to talk about. Chris is going to talk about, how being rich kept him from dying. Basically,
how entrepreneurship and copywriting saved my life. Quite honestly,
right.
Saved my life in many ways. It's funny too, because Brian, you know me pretty well. I am so against bragging about money in general. It's it's a thing that I find kind of repulsive, but I came up with this title and I was like, I kind of have to use it. I can't stop myself. I think it's too great.
So give the title and then the floor is yours.
Let me share my screen here. There it is. Share. Can everybody see my screen now? See my window?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So this speech is called "If I Wasn't Rich, I'd Be Dead." And this is the shortened version of a speech that I gave at Copy Accelerator for Justin and Stefan back in the before time, the world we used to live in. I think it was like February 2020 before everything went to hell. And It got a pretty good response. The original version was over an hour long. I cut like 15 slides out of this. So you're not going to get to hear some of my best stories. You're not going to get to hear my story about getting arrested at Burning Man, unfortunately. You're not going to get to hear my story about when whoever that guy from The Wolf of Wall Street is tried to hire me. And he was trying to hire me and saying, bro, you just give me a deal this time and I'll pay you later. Because, people always do that, right? Never say yes. And then at one point he's like, no, man, really, like Scorsese's doing a movie about me. Leonardo DiCaprio is going to play me. And I was like, fuck you. No way. A couple of years later, the movie came out. So I was an asshole. I was wrong. Anyway, so we'll get through this in a reasonable amount of time. This is when I first gave this speech, Justin and Stefan said, hey, will you come to Las Vegas and will you tell your story? And I thought they were going to ask me to teach copywriting stuff. And I'm like, well, which story do you want me to teach or tell? And they said, tell your story, the real story of what's going on with you in your life and your career. And I said, oh, so you want me to make people cry? Cool. I'm there. I'll see what I can do. So go ahead. Yeah, here we go. So again, this is the shortened version, but we'll see how we can do. Let me see. Is there any way I can see the time? It's only 9:00. Okay, cool. Let's go. But I think Brian met me back in the day when I used to have this awesome limp and I was like 30 pounds heavier than I am now. But basically, this is probably one of the most seminal events of my life. I think it sucks in a lot of ways. I also think going through this and experiencing that level of physical pain for so long is part of why I'm the copywriter I am today. Because everything I talk about in my copy is all about empathy and emotion. And I always feel like the best way to have empathy for people is to use your own experiences and your own pain and realize you're not special. And that's awesome.
I love your positioning on that, Chris, because when you think of Brendan Burchard, he has his story about how, he had the big accident in the Caribbean and did I live? Did I love? And the way that you're talking about it is, the way that it really developed your copy chops. And I think it's I like the angle on it. I mean, looking back, it's easier, of course, than what you went through.
No, it is. And I always say, be grateful for your tragedies, right? Like my dad's death as well. We'll get into a slide in a few minutes where I talk about how I used my dad's death to become a better copywriter, which he would have appreciated because he was a salesman. But I always say, I've been through a fair amount of stuff. I don't feel like a victim at all. I don't see that. I think that everybody has their shit. Brian, you've had your shit. Everybody on the screen has had their shit. Some people get more, some people get less, whatever. But I do feel like for me, the thing that has helped me get through all this is understanding that there's lessons to be learned and that you can take the experiences that you go through and be there for other people who have also gone through them. I'm a great person to have around if you've been in an accident or you've lost a parent or something like that, because I know how to be there. Anyway, eventually, as I was functionally crippled, hanging upside down all the time, spending a lot of time crying, not sleeping, etc., I was still kind of building my business a little bit. I got up to like making $70,000 a year. I was somehow on Harlan Kilstein's email list. Not even sure how I got on there. I think it was from the AWAI list or something like that, or forum. And Harlan was running a thing in Las Vegas called his value-based copywriting seminar. And so I was like, hey, I want to charge more for copy. I made $70,000 this year. I can afford to get on a plane and go somewhere for the first time in who knows how many years. So I went down there and I took his seminar. I spent a large portion of it laying down on the ground in the back of the room because I could not actually sit up for that long. And eventually I ended up joining Harlan's coaching group for $1,000 a month, which seemed like an impossible amount of money for me at the time. Harlan led to me actually meeting John Carlton. I will always remember the moment that John Carlton and I became friends, or I realized that John Carlton and I were friends, because I was at Sang, which is the thing Larry Benet used to run down in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Larry's been a friend of mine for years and years, and a real booster for me as well. And while I was down at Sang, John was there and I was all nervous to talk to him. And at one point he's like sitting down and I walked by and he says, "Come here, you schmuck." And I lean down and he grabs me by the face and he just slaps me across the face. And that's when I knew that John Carlton and I were friends, because he will not abuse somebody.
Yes, that is the indicator. Absolutely.
It really is. It really is. So that's what kind of got me going in direct response copy world. Like I said, I'd made, I think, $70,000 total gross the year before. I ended up making $100,000 in my first 6 months as a copywriter, as a direct response copywriter, and went on to make almost $200,000 that year, which to me at the time was a fucking impossible amount of money.
Who's the guy on the right? Who's the guy on the right? On that
That's Jeff. That's Jeff Paul there.
Oh, Jeff Paul.
Yeah,
on the past slide.
That's David Garfinkel. I didn't mean to mention.
Oh, David Garfinkel. I didn't recognize him at all.
Yeah. He's got quite a look on his face. Garf was one of my early mentors as well, and somebody who I kind of stalked to teach me way back in the day.
Yeah, Garfinkel's a great guy.
Yeah, so I'd say these three guys plus Jeff Walker are probably the main people that kind of helped me learn about this stuff and kind of get going. more than anything else. They took a lot of my money, but I got a lot more back out of it in exchange. That led to me, I went to Underground 5. So Harlan said to me, I was like, how do I get clients? And Harlan said to me, you get clients by going to events. And I said, what event should I go to? And he said, you should go to Big Seminar 5 in Florida or Atlanta, I think it was. Whatever. And it was $2,000, but I bit the bullet and I paid the $2,000 and I got on a plane. And Harlan had said to me, what you do is you just take your business cards, you give them to everybody. So at one point I got up and I went around the entire room on a break and I put my business card on every single place setting throughout the entire place, probably a couple hundred of them. And then afterwards, Armin Morin got up on stage and said, whoever put their cards everywhere, don't do that. You're not allowed to. But it did lead to me getting some phone calls and it did lead to me getting some clients, including Jeff Paul. And Jim Quick here, I think is his name. Is it Quick? Jim something. Either way, they hired me fresh out of something. They gave me $10,000 to write a package for them. And I was incredibly nervous because I'd never really written anything in direct response marketing before. But I stayed up all night for like 3 days, got it done. They were happy with it, even though they didn't end up actually using the copy I wrote them for legal reasons. But they were happy and that got me started and started getting me kind of a reputation in direct marketing world. And having, Jeff Paul look at some of my copy when I was just getting started and say, hey, this is really good and want to hire me. Because he was a pretty big deal at the time in the make money from home kind of niche before he, didn't he get arrested or something? Poor guy. I know he lost everything.
A lot of guys in that group got arrested.
Yeah. They were pretty hard nosed and pretty over the line. I think they all got in a lot of trouble. But from learning how to hype things and learning copy at an early age, it was a pretty good way to go. From there, I just started kind of building my business and started getting a pretty good reputation. This man here, Joe Barton, hired me early on. He's actually the guy that gave me the Mr. Moneyfingers name at one point because I made him a lot of money. I wrote, I think, 5 or 6 different kind of letters for him back to back. He only paid me $5,000 at the time for each one. And I thought that was so much money. And then I found out later how much he was making off of them. And hey, whatever. Anyway, Joe became one of my first clients. And I talked a minute ago about kind of using your own pain and your own tragedies in order to actually, in your copy. And you'll see here, one of the first letters I did for Joe was actually a back pain letter. Because as you know, I spent many, many years in back pain and I was able to really identify with and empathize with that market. I also did a heart offer for him, a heart attack, heart health kind of offer for him. And when writing that, I used my own experiences with my dad because my dad died of a heart attack at 47 years old. I'm 44 now. That is getting closer and closer, by the way. And just used the exact story I just told you a few minutes ago about my father's dead, honey, get your things in that actual letter. From there, my career kind of went on for a little while. I was up to making like $20,000 a month or something, which seemed like an impossible amount of money. I was still in tremendous pain all the time. I was sicker than I knew at the time. I was kind of crumpling, going forward, couldn't dream any bigger than that. I somehow ended up getting associated with Jeff Walker. I actually saw him at a seminar and just walked right up to him and said, hey, my name's Chris. Nice to meet you. I hear you're doing some kind of product launch manager group or something like that. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. I ended up paying Jeff like $5,000, got into his group, became good friends with him. I learned a lot from him. And then at one point he had his product launch formula. Oh, I should do that one. Wait. Oh, I got rid of that one. Okay. Anyway, talked to Jeff for a while, started doing launch management, started doing pretty well with it, ran some 7-figure launches, but was still working for other people, was still starting every month pretty much at zero, right? I didn't have any of my own kind of offers going. I didn't have any kind of passive or semi-passive income of any kind. Then at one point, this guy, Jay Diebold and Alan Sultanic called me up. All these guys who are in the kind of like hard-nosed ClickBank, magic software, make money kind of niche. They're all big fans of mine, which is funny because I don't like some of them, but I do like Jay. Anyway, Jay at one point hired me to do an offer called Mobile Money Machines. And they paid me $25,000 to do that letter, $25,000 up front, no problem. It only took me, I think, 2 days to do the letter because I write really fast and they really had their hook and their idea down. And I gave it over to them. And a few weeks later, they end up launching the offer. And I called Jay up and I'm like, hey, dude, how's it doing? How's it working? How's it going? And he said to me, dude, we're crushing it. And I'm like, that's fucking awesome. And he said, yeah, we made I think $10 million in sales or something like that. The refund rate was insane, but still $10,000 in sales. And I said to Jay, I said, well, why don't you send me a bonus or something? That's awesome. I made all of this money. And he said, yeah, man, I'm going to send you a bonus. And he did. He sent me a bonus and it was a check for $5,000, which is a lot of money. But when you just made somebody $10 million and you get a $5,000 bonus, I think it changes a little bit about how you look at these things. And to me, at least, after having spent much time running 7-figure launches and writing letters for people that went out and became ClickBank #1s and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what finally broke me from the idea of wanting to be a freelance copywriter. I still think being a freelance copywriter long-term is not a great way to make a living. You have to have some of your own stuff in your back pocket, relying on clients all the time. I just wouldn't want to do it. And also, if I had still been a freelance copywriter when the shit I'm about to tell you about started to happen, there's no way in hell I would have survived. I would have gone completely bankrupt and probably would be dead. From there, though, I decided I wanted to start doing my own stuff. So I was on the phone with Mike Hill at one point saying, hey, I want to do some kind of ClickBank product. I didn't know anything about ClickBank at that time, actually, about how it all worked. I didn't know anything about like EPCs or how to run a mailing list or anything like that. I only really knew how to write sales letters. But Mike and I were on the phone at one point, and I was single at the time and pretty good at texting girls because I'm a writer. And Mike said, oh, you should do an offer called like text your wife into bed. And I'm like, that's a great idea. Text your wife into bed, about teaching guys in marriages how to have more sex with their wives by using text messages. Seemed like a cool idea. Again, I had no idea what I was doing, but I started to put the offer together. I wrote a sales video. I paid my friend Corey too much money to kind of put it up. I was going on ClickBank and just trying to kind of copy whatever people were doing because I had no idea how the psychology of these things actually worked. I remember I put Text Your Wife into Bed up. I had no connections in that niche, but I put it up and I walked away. And the next day I woke up and I'd made $700 overnight on that offer. And I had no idea who it was from, but that $700 was some of the most powerful, potent, amazing money I'd ever made in my life. And it kind of got me thinking, hey, maybe there's something to this, actually owning your own offers as opposed to just writing for other people all the time. From there, I ended up starting to speak a little bit. I spoke at Ryan Lee's event in Connecticut at one point, which was hilarious because he actually took my VSL, which is at howtogethead.com is the URL if you want to check it out. But it's an offer called Oral Fixation, which is about getting a woman to want to give you a blowjob. And Ryan took it and put it up on the screen in front of 600 people and had it play. It was pretty amazing. I sold a lot of stuff that day. It was great.
Ryan's become a monk. I don't know if you know that now.
No, I don't know that.
Yeah, after doing that, he became deeply religious. I'm kidding.
No, I don't think so either. It's really funny because that was the first time I ever pitched from stage, and he showed that, and I actually I outsold the 6 or 7 other people that were selling that weekend. So that felt pretty good. From there, I actually had talked to Jeff Walker at one point and said that I wanted to speak at his product launch formula event, which he had not ever thought of before. But I went to Jeff. He had at one point said, hey, I had talent. He was really telling me that I need to move away from just being a freelance copywriter and try to do something else. I went to him at one point and I said, hey, Jeff, what would make it a no-brainer for you to have me speak on your stage at PLF Live? And he never actually came back to me, but I ended up speaking on his stage, doing a speech called 7 Laws of Launch Offers That Are Crushing It Right Now, and got a really, really good response from the audience. I tend to do pretty well on stage. Afterwards, this woman you see on your right called Amal Wagner came up to me and she said, I want to put you on TV. And I said, who are you and why? She told me that she was a PR agent who's worked with a lot of people in the personal development space. And I told her, okay, well, the only thing that I have offer-wise is this text your wife into bed thing. She said, that's too dirty. We can't do that. My assistant at the time said, what if we did something called Text the Romance Back instead? And I said, yeah, let's do that. So that was in like December or November, I think, and Valentine's Day was coming up. So all of a sudden, Amal got to work doing her magic PR-wise. And I wrote a little free report. It was like 3 magic texts to send to your spouse and started doing all this PR stuff. All of a sudden, I was flying around the country, going to do local television, doing blogs, doing radio shows, all this stuff. And then at one point, Rachel Ray's people actually texted or got in touch with Amal. This was right when Tiger Woods was getting into a lot of trouble for texting porn stars. So like sexting was really out in the ether at that point. And they said, hey, we want to have Michael Fiore come out to New York City for our Valentine's Day episode and talk about texting, talk about romantic texting. So I told my family about that. They were all shocked. My brother was like, what the fuck is my little brother doing on television? I ended up writing the entire product for Text the Romance Back in 2 days. I think it was 20,000 words. Got it done in 2 days. Flew out to New York City in pain the entire time because my back was really screwed up. Ended up going on the show. We were in the green room before actually going out there. And Amal was like pinning my jacket to me because I hadn't worn an undershirt and I was sweating through my shirt because there was no air conditioning in the back. Eventually they take me out there and I walk out and it's air conditioned and that's great. And I go to sit down and there's this warm-up guy in the audience. They always have like a comedian in the audience to keep the audience warm between segments. And he immediately sees me and just starts giving me shit and making fun of me. And I'm from Massachusetts. So all of a sudden I felt incredibly comfortable, right? I was just like, okay. So I gave him a little bit back. This incredibly flamingly gay makeup guy comes rushing out and is like patting the powder on my head because it's too shiny. Rachel is sitting right next to me, like looking at her notes. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my life. This is fucking hilarious. My brother and his wife are up in the back because they live in New York City. I had been told by the producer, this is not going to be about sexting. This is going to be about romantic texting. It's about romantic texting. We went over the segment, all 6 minutes of it. I knew exactly what I was going to say. The light turns on, the camera starts going. It's going to be romantic texting. All of a sudden, Rachel Ray's there and she goes, okay, let's talk about sexting to the entire audience. And all 200 or 300 women in the audience are kind of swooning in some way. And I'm like, fuck yeah, Rachel, let's talk about sexting. The entire segment gets changed from what it is. I have to improv the whole thing more or less. And it goes really, really well. And I'm really happy about it. We didn't make a lot of sales off that because they only showed the URL at the beginning of the segment, which is insane. Why would you do that? But it did give me a tremendous amount of credibility in the market. And from there, I was able to start building my Michael Fiore brand and my relationship advice business pretty damn quickly. I think that was 2010. And then within a few years, I had created Text the Romance Back at first, which became a ClickBank top 10 for a while. Then we did Text Your Ex Back, which was in the top 10 for ClickBank for like 6 years or something. I did one called Capture His Heart and Make Him Love You Forever. That was, again, over and over again for several years there. Every single offer I did ended up crushing it. We had all these affiliates pushing. We were making, I think, $3.5 million net a year, basically, or something like that on that stuff. It was going really hot. It was going really great. My career was going off in this amazing direction. I even had a puppet of myself made to use in a VSL, and it was great. But at the same time, I was tired all the time, and my skin was kind of gray. And I just was angry all the time and couldn't think straight. And it took me months and months while my business was kind of going off in this rocket of a direction to figure out what was going on. And eventually I went to a doctor who took some tests and said, well, Chris, you have Lyme disease. I was like, why the fuck would I have Lyme disease? But I'm from Massachusetts. I was a Boy Scout when I was a kid. I got bit by ticks a few times. And eventually we figured out I had Lyme disease since I was about 14 or so. And I was 33, 34 at the time. So what I didn't know for all of those years, but I had been walking around a very sick man for all of those years. I had been exhausted all the time for all of those years. I was in pain all the time from my back issues. And I remember thinking, like, I always thought there was something wrong with me because I was like, why is it so easy for other people to work a full 40-hour week, but I can't do it? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Then I kind of entered this weird, somewhat awesome, somewhat hellish part of my life where my business was continuing to do really well. We put our offers out twice a year. We'd make a lot of money on it. I had a staff that was really taking care of a lot of things. But at the same time, I was insanely, horrifyingly sick. I could only work maybe 2 hours a day. I spent most of my time being a basement troll, as I've been told, and just trying to get by. Eventually, I ended up actually having to go to Florida for 7 months to go to a clinic that was down there to get Lyme disease treatment, where I was paying, I think, $3,000 or $5,000 a week for 7 months just to be able to get treatment. Like I said, if I wasn't rich, I'd be dead, right? That's a lot of fucking money. And if I didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars a month coming in at that point, there's no way I wouldn't have been able to afford it or do it. Even then, it took 7 months. My first marriage fell apart. I was eating 100 pills or more every single day just to get through the day. The kids you see on the screen right now are a family that I ended up helping in Florida because they were a very, very poor Canadian family. All 4 kids were incredibly sick. They were trying to get help by doing like mainstream media stuff. They have like local news come by and do a thing on it. And I saw that and I'm like, that's not going to make any money. So instead I went on Facebook and I posted and I wrote to a couple of groups I'm in with high level entrepreneurs, and I managed to raise 25 grand overnight for them. And they told me that actually gave them the money they needed to be able to get treatment and continue and help the kids. And to this day, that is probably the most powerful, heartwarming thing I've ever used copywriting to do, was making that Facebook post. While I was in Florida, feeling horrible and whatnot, we were getting ready to launch the Language of Desire, which ended up being one of our most powerful, profitable products. It's the letter that bought my house, I always say. So when we first put that offer out, I didn't really know what was going to happen with it. But this is actually where I first kind of created what eventually ended up kind of becoming what's called the PIG method, which is the course I'm releasing on December 2nd, because this is the first time that I really started using this very story-oriented style and the format that I ended up using. And so I love this picture here because it's a picture of me with an IV in my arm in Florida while also running the launch for this offer, which was super duper fun. I really needed this offer to do well at the time. It was the only thing that kept me actually going while I was in severe depression, incredibly sick, and in a ton of pain. I also, while I was in Florida, by the way, had to have ass surgery. I had to have a piece of my ass taken out because I had a problem. So I was in pain, sick, and had ass surgery at the same time. How pitiful can you kind of get? Anyway, that language desire thing, we launched it. We did $500,000 in sales that first week, which at $37 or $47 a pop is pretty tough. That offer ended up kind of becoming ClickBank number 2 or 3 for like 2 or 3 years. We never even split tested anything else on it, but it just kind of kept going, which was awesome. And that money is what enabled me to even have any chance whatsoever of recovering from the horrible, horrible disease I was dealing with. So anyway, I went through all of that. I got out of my bad first marriage with a woman who really didn't like me. I remember at one point, I went to our couples counselor on my own, and I said this is not my ex-wife, this is my current wife, by the way. But I talked to the counselor and I said, it just seems like my ex-wife or Ashley doesn't really like me. And the counselor said to me, well, she really doesn't. And I was like, then why the hell are we married? So I fired her and fell in love with this incredibly beautiful 6'1" copywriter, New Zealand copywriter who works for a friend of mine named Angie Lowell, who is my current and wonderful wife. And that's it, right? Like everything went happily ever after. I fell in love with this amazing woman and she loves me and I love her. And I'm kind of getting over my Lyme disease stuff. I'm feeling a little bit better every day. Hey, my career took a real kick in the balls while I was sick for so long. But now that I'm feeling better, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to get back on top. It's going to be happily ever after, right? Because that's how the movie ends.
Thanks for listening to the Timeless Marketing Podcast with Brian Kurtz. Visit briankurtz.net and click podcast at the top of the page for a full transcript and show notes. If you are interested in working with Brian personally inside of Titans Accelerator, go to briankurtz.net/help to see how Titans can help you grow and scale your business. That's briankurtz.net/help.